In the UK, we've got a very overarching standard. Everything pretty much now is HD. In terms of media, it's mainly MXF and it's mainly AVC Intra 100 codec that's being used. So with regards to that, I don't know if you're aware, but there was a consortium of broadcasters that came together a few years ago. So like the BBC, ITV, Channel 4, Sky, people like that, all the big UK broadcasters. They formed a group called the DPP, which is the Digital Production Partnership. And the DPP's goal was to standardise on a format to go through. So obviously everything used to be delivered on tape. You know, different production companies used to deliver a tape to the BBC, you know, quite often deliver it on a motorbike, kind of thing like that. So when the move to file-based media came, they were looking for a way to unify it and to make sure that everybody knew exactly what to do. So that's where the DPP came in, and they came up with a format called AS11. So every single programme that goes on TV in the UK has to be delivered as an AS11 file, which essentially is an MXF file with AVC Intra 100 media inside it and a certain audio channel layout. Generally, consumer stuff is things like MOV, like QuickTimes, MP4 files and stuff like that. Whereas professional level stuff, we often come across MXF as a container. We do also use MOV, we do also use MP4 sometimes, but the majority of stuff these days does appear to be MXF. As a container format, it's a lot more flexible. There's a load of different things you can put inside it. You can arrange your MXF file in loads of different ways. You know, you can customize it right down to the individual bits and bytes, which for some broadcasters is really important because they need to make sure that the media that they've got is exactly what they want, you know, the media that's being delivered to them. In terms of codecs, there's a big variation in codecs. So one of the main things is that codecs for consumer products, you know, like camcorders and iPhones and things like that, are generally very compressed, and they're generally, you know, they're designed to be quick and easy to use, so not necessarily designed for the highest quality or for easy editing, whereas stuff you find in the broadcast domain is definitely designed more for like quick editing and high quality.
Another important aspect of how we'll be watching video in the future is the resolution. You might be wondering how this relates to format. Well, the resolution all depends on which codec you are using. For example, using H.264 is the best resolution for high definition. 4K or Ultra HD refers to the resolution that is 3840 by 2160 pixels. Some companies that are already producing content to be streamed in 4K include Netflix, Amazon Prime, BT Sport, YouTube and Sky Q. From a gaming point of view, the Xbox One S also uses 4K. Although 4K is becoming more and more common, there are still limitations and it's still unclear whether the entire television industry will eventually adopt it. These limitations include the fact that creators of television, film and other programming must start to film in 4K, which is incredibly expensive and not many people are doing this yet. Another issue is the fact that you actually have to sit closer to the television to even notice a difference in the quality. A further issue, especially when watching on Netflix, is that you must have a minimum broadband speed of 15 megabytes per second. Further in the future, the resolution could be 8K. This is 7680 times 4320 pixels. A further development from this is the idea that there could be an 11K, which Samsung is currently trying to develop. However, experts say that the increase in pixels will be unnoticeable to the human eye. We spoke to Christopher Diaz, a support manager, to see what his opinions were on the matter.
Essentially, if you look at the actual numbers, a 4K TV has twice the number of dots on it as an HD TV, so it's twice the quality. For the viewers, it's going to mean a better picture. It's going to mean something nicer to view. You're going to be able to see every single blade of grass on the ground, or beads of sweat on somebody's face and this kind of thing. So I think it's going to be a much more immersive experience for the consumer. I think in the professional sense, it's going to make life a little bit more difficult because obviously with more information, you've got more dots in your picture, potentially a higher frame rate. You're going to have much bigger file sizes, so you're going to need faster computers, you're going to need bigger drives, you're going to need all sorts of stuff like that. So essentially the whole pipeline is going to have to expand. I do wonder if maybe the take up for 4K won't be quite as big as it has been for HD, because for me there was quite a quantum leap in quality between SD and HD. When HD came along, I was really impressed and I thought this does actually look good.
HDR, or high dynamic range, is the ability to have a greater difference between the darkest darks and the whitest white on a television, and is the idea that there is a wider range of colours. An easy way to explain this is the idea that you have a colouring book, let's say. If you have standard dynamic range, you only have 5 colours to colour in your picture. Obviously, it's not going to look great and as realistic as you'd want it to. With high dynamic range, you'd have a huge pack of so many different colours. This obviously is going to look a lot better and more vibrant. This is what it does on the TV. Another thing it does is make it seem more realistic to the human eye, so the colour will look how it does in real life. In old 4K TVs, there was not a high colour depth, and this is something which 4K TV manufacturers and creators wanted to change by developing what is now called HDR colour display and standards, which are made up mainly by the standards of wide colour gamut, or WCG, and 10-bit colour, as opposed to the 18-bit colour of standard dynamic range content and TVs. So, you heard me mention colour depth there. As I said earlier, my colouring pencil metaphor, HDR means that there is a wider range of colours. This is colour depth. I'll explain it to you. Colour depth is measured in bits, and the number of bits indicates how many colours are available for each single pixel. In easy terms, in a black and white image, only 2 colours are needed. This means it has a colour depth of 1. Therefore, the greater the colour depth, the more colours that are available to you. Here is a chart to explain the colour depth and how many colours would be available. Now, back to HDR. HDR currently only really works alongside 4K TVs. 4K is what gives you more pixels, and HDR is what makes them look better. The only limitation with this, which is obvious, is the fact that you need to have a 4K TV to even have the ability to watch things with HDR.
Yeah, so HDR is kind of coming hand in hand with 4K, and there's another technology that goes with it, which is WCG, or wide colour gamut. And essentially, again, that's another thing that isn't talked about quite as much because it's not quite as obvious a difference. So 4K, like we said, lots more dots. HDR and wide colour gamut is basically a bigger range of colours that can be displayed. And at the moment, a lot of people don't realise it, but the amount of colours that our TVs can display at the moment, we're limited by a standard called Rec 709. And Rec 709 is the same colour standard that's been around pretty much since the beginning of colour TV. So our TVs now are not showing any different colours or any more colours than they have been since the 70s. So HDR and wide colour gamut are coming along to kind of change that, because essentially they're broadening the range of colours that our tellies are going to be able to display, which means that program makers can be more creative. It means they can push things a little bit more in the colour grade than they used to be able to. Stuff like HDR is interesting because what that is that's going to be a bigger difference between the brights and the darks.
Whatever it is, it's going to be something that's lossless, but it doesn't degrade the quality of the video, because I guess the biggest problem is right now you have to decide when you're creating a video, you want the best quality, you want the best picture, the best sound, but when you use something like MP4 or H.264, then especially if you're you're looking at YouTube or something, or Vimeo or something like that, the quality on there is sometimes it's quite good, but it's always highly compressed, so the file sizes are quite small, and then that leads to the sound quality is affected, the picture quality is affected. So it's got to be something, eventually, a bit like what's that show, Silicon Valley. When they invent a lossless compression where you get small file size but the quality doesn't change. So that's whatever it's going to be. I don't think what we have now is the future.